Imagine for a moment that every man you know, no matter how strong, confident, or intelligent he may appear, carries within himself a hidden labyrinth of insecurities, unspoken fears, and secret vulnerabilities. Think about it. Even the most powerful leaders in history had their private shadows, and even the most stoic men of today struggle silently with the burdens of their inner world. Now, what if I told you that Carl-Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, left us with insights so profound that they reveal 9 hidden weaknesses in men, weaknesses so subtle yet so powerful that if you learn to recognize them, you can not only understand men on a much deeper level, but also learn how to navigate relationships, power dynamics, and influence in ways that most people will never comprehend. And I promise you this, the 9th weakness is the most shocking and the most powerful of all. Before we begin this exploration, let me invite you to join this journey of self-discovery and hidden truths. If you are fascinated by the unseen forces that shape human behavior, make sure to subscribe to this channel, leave a like, comment your thoughts as we go along, and share this video with someone who is ready to open their mind. I assure you, what we are about to uncover may change the way you understand men forever. Carl Jung believed that the psyche is a battlefield of opposites. The conscious and the unconscious, the persona and the shadow, the mask a man shows the world, and the raw truths he hides even from himself. By understanding these contrasts, we begin to see through the armor that men wear every day. We start to recognize not just their strengths, but their deepest frailties. So let us begin with the first weakness, one that lies beneath almost every male interaction, yet often goes unnoticed. The first hidden weakness in men is the pressure of the persona. Jung described the persona as the mask each of us wears in society, the carefully constructed identity we project to others in order to be accepted, respected, and admired. For men, this mask is often shaped by cultural expectations, to be strong, successful, unshakable. Yet this mask becomes a prison. The more a man clings to his persona, the more fragile he becomes inside, because he fears that if the mask slips, people will see the truth, his doubts, his vulnerabilities, his humanity. This fear of being unmasked can be exploited, not by cruelty, but by awareness. When you recognize that a man is over-attached to his persona, you see that beneath the polished surface lies insecurity. Ask yourself, how many men in your life cling so tightly to their social role that they crumble when it is questioned? The second hidden weakness is repression of emotions. Jung emphasized that whatever we repress in our unconscious does not disappear. It grows stronger, waiting to erupt in unexpected ways. Men are often taught from childhood to suppress feelings of sadness, fear, or tenderness. They are told to man up, to silence the vulnerable parts of themselves. But repression is like burying dynamite under the floor. Over time, it builds pressure, creating inner conflict that leaks out through anger, coldness, or destructive behaviors. A man who represses his emotions is a man divided within himself, and this division is a weakness that silently governs his actions. When you notice sudden bursts of rage, silence after conflict, or avoidance of emotional intimacy, you are witnessing the shadow of repression at work. The third weakness is the longing for validation. Despite appearances of independence, many men are secretly driven by a hunger for recognition. Jung observed that the ego thrives on affirmation, and when it is not fed, it begins to feel threatened. For men, external validation often becomes the silent currency of their self-worth. They seek respect in their careers, admiration from their peers, approval from their partners. And when this validation is withheld, many men feel lost, invisible, or even attacked. Think for a moment. How often does a man's mood depend on whether he feels appreciated or acknowledged? This is not simply vanity. It is a psychological dependency that can reveal where his true weaknesses lie. These first 3 weaknesses already show us something profound. Men, like all human beings, are far more fragile than they let on. Their armor, their silence, their pride, all of it is often a cover for something much more delicate inside. By observing the mask of the persona, the cracks of repression, and the thirst for validation, we begin to see through the veil of appearances. But this is only the beginning. Because, as Jung reminds us, the unconscious is vast and its influence extends into every corner of life. In the next part, we will go even deeper into the hidden shadows that men carry, desires they cannot admit, fears they cannot face, and illusions they cling to as if their survival depended on them. And remember, the last weakness we will uncover is not only the most hidden but also the most powerful key to understanding the male psyche. So let me ask you this. Have you ever seen a man who looked unshakable, yet with one well-placed word or moment of silence, you could sense his entire confidence trembling? Share your thoughts in the comments, because the more we explore these truths together, the clearer it becomes. What is hidden shapes us far more than what is seen. Carl-Jung once said, "Man cannot stand a meaningless life," and within that simple truth lies another layer of hidden fragility. As we continue this exploration, let us remember that every weakness we uncover is not just a flaw, it is a doorway into the unseen dynamics of the male psyche. If you truly understand these vulnerabilities, you gain a map to human behavior that few ever dare to study. The fourth hidden weakness in men is the fear of insignificance. Beneath ambition, beneath pride, beneath the endless chase for success, lies an unspoken dread, the fear that life may ultimately mean nothing, that their efforts might fade into obscurity. For many men, identity is tied to achievement. They measure their worth by external results, by promotions, wealth, or recognition. But Jung taught us that the true meaning of life does not come from what society bestows upon us. It emerges from individuation, the process of becoming whole. When a man has not yet touched this deeper purpose, he is vulnerable to despair, restlessness, or even self-destruction. You may notice this in men who constantly chase bigger goals, yet never feel satisfied, who fall apart when their career stalls, or who crumble when they are no longer admired. This hunger for significance can be exploited, because when a man's sense of meaning is shaken, his foundation trembles. The fifth weakness is the shadow self. Jung's most famous contribution to psychology was his exploration of the shadow, the dark side of the personality, the parts of ourselves we deny, repress, or fear. For men, the shadow often contains traits that clash with their ideal self-image: vulnerability, jealousy, dependency, or even cruelty. The more a man rejects his shadow, the stronger it grows in his unconscious, waiting to erupt. And when it does, it can be destructive, both to himself and to those around him. A man who cannot face his shadow is at its mercy. But here is the secret. When you recognize someone's shadow traits before they do, you hold a powerful insight into their behavior. Have you ever noticed a man who loudly insists he is never jealous, only to reveal jealousy in subtle actions? That is the shadow speaking. The sixth hidden weakness is the wound of intimacy. Despite cultural portrayals of men as confident and emotionally strong, many men carry a deep fear of vulnerability in relationships. They may long for closeness, yet withdraw when it begins to demand too much honesty. This is not because they lack feelings, but because intimacy threatens the defenses they have built around their hearts. Jung spoke of the anima, the inner feminine within every man. When a man resists connection with his anima, he struggles with intimacy in the outer world. This weakness shows itself in men who fear commitment, who sabotage deep relationships, or who retreat into silence when emotions run high. They long for love, but fear the surrender it requires. If you learn to see this wound, you understand why some men seem both desperate for connection and terrified of it at the same time. Now pause for a moment and reflect. How many of these weaknesses have you already witnessed in the men around you? The fear of insignificance, the unacknowledged shadow, the wound of intimacy. These are not rare conditions. They are near universal patterns, hidden beneath the surface of masculinity. And once you begin to see them, you cannot unsee them. But let us go deeper still. Imagine a man who appears strong, confident, unbreakable. Yet all it takes is one subtle trigger, being ignored, being criticized, being forced to confront his own shadow, and suddenly the armor shatters. This is the paradox Jung revealed. What appears strongest is often most fragile, and what appears hidden is often most powerful. Before we move on to the final three weaknesses, I invite you again. Share your reflections below. Which of these truths resonates most with you so far? Which weakness have you seen play out most clearly in the lives of men you know? Your insights not only deepen your own understanding, but also help others on this journey of discovery. And remember, the most dangerous weakness of all is still ahead. The ninth weakness is the one men guard most carefully, the one they cannot bear to admit, even to themselves. It is the weakness that, once revealed, can change everything you thought you knew about the male psyche. In the next part, we will uncover weaknesses 7 and 8, two of the most hidden vulnerabilities that shape a man's destiny, silently controlling his choices and interactions without him even realizing it. These weaknesses are often mistaken for strength, but as Jung teaches, illusions of power often conceal the deepest fragility. So stay with me as we go deeper into the shadowed corridors of the unconscious, because once you see the truth, you cannot return to ignorance, and that truth will grant you a new way of understanding the men in your life, and perhaps even yourself. Carl-Jung once observed, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But most men never reach this privilege because they remain trapped within illusions that bind them. These illusions give the appearance of control, yet behind them lies hidden fragility. As we continue our exploration of the 9 hidden weaknesses in men, we now arrive at weaknesses 7 and 8, two of the most subtle, yet the most telling of all. The 7th hidden weakness in men is the illusion of control. Men are often taught that to be a man is to dominate their circumstances, to always be the one in charge, to never show hesitation. Control becomes not just a habit, but a symbol of identity. Yet Jung reminded us that the unconscious resists control, and life itself cannot be mastered by force. When a man believes he has everything under control, it is often when he is most vulnerable. One unexpected change, one failure, one loss can unravel the entire illusion. You can see this in men who cling obsessively to order, who cannot bear unpredictability, or who lash out when things do not go according to plan. Their strength is borrowed, not real. It depends on circumstances behaving as expected, and life, as we know, rarely obeys. The 8th weakness is the denial of mortality. Jung emphasized that the confrontation with death is essential for psychological growth, yet many men live as if death does not apply to them, avoiding the thought of aging, fragility, or impermanence. They may mask this fear through excessive ambition, through chasing youth, or through avoiding deep reflection. But underneath there is a silent terror, the awareness that time is slipping away, and with it the illusions of invincibility. This weakness often becomes visible in midlife, when men face crises of identity, questioning whether their lives have meaning, or whether their choices were in vain. It is here that Jung's idea of individuation becomes crucial, because unless a man learns to integrate the reality of death, he becomes its prisoner, driven by denial and fear rather than wisdom. Have you noticed how some men desperately cling to the past, resisting change, refusing to acknowledge their own limits? That is the shadow of mortality speaking. Now pause and reflect. These weaknesses may seem abstract, but they play out every day, often in silence. A father who controls his family with rigid rules because he fears losing authority. A colleague who becomes restless and anxious when plans shift unexpectedly. A man who suddenly buys symbols of youth in an attempt to escape the reality of aging. These are not random behaviors. They are signs of deep vulnerabilities hidden beneath the surface. And now we stand on the edge of the greatest revelation. We have uncovered 8 weaknesses so far: the pressure of the persona, the repression of emotions, the hunger for validation, the fear of insignificance, the shadow self, the wound of intimacy, the illusion of control, and the denial of mortality. Each of these has shown us that men, for all their outer appearances of strength, carry fragile truths within them. But the final weakness, the 9th, is the most profound of all. It is not only hidden from the world, it is often hidden from the man himself. Carl-Jung believed that what we refuse to confront in the unconscious will eventually rule over us. The 9th weakness is exactly this: the inability to confront the true self. Beneath the persona, beyond the shadow, behind the illusions of power and control, lies the authentic self, the man as he truly is. Most men spend their lives running from this truth because to face it requires stripping away every mask, every defense, every illusion. It requires admitting fragility, fear, and failure. And that is why this weakness is the most powerful of all, because it is universal. Until a man faces himself fully, he will always remain divided, always vulnerable to forces he does not understand. But before we dive fully into this final revelation, I want you to consider this. Have you ever seen a man resist deep reflection, change the subject when life's meaning comes up, or laugh off questions about who he truly is? That resistance is not casual. It is a defense against the greatest weakness of all. In the final part, we will explore this last weakness in depth. We will uncover why it is the ultimate key to understanding the male psyche, and why Jung believed that confronting the true self is not only the most difficult task a man will ever face, but also the only path to real freedom. And once you see this truth, you will never look at men or yourself the same way again. So ask yourself, what would happen if every mask fell away? If every illusion dissolved? If every weakness was revealed? Would the man you see still be the same? Or would he finally become who he truly is? Share your reflections below and prepare for the final part of this journey where everything comes together. Carl-Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." And with this we arrive at the ninth and final hidden weakness of men, the one that overshadows all the others, the one most deeply buried within the unconscious. It is the inability to confront the true self. Think for a moment about all the masks a man wears in his life. The mask of confidence, the mask of strength, the mask of success, the mask of control. Each mask is carefully crafted to win approval from the world, to hide insecurities, to protect him from pain. Yet beneath these masks lies the authentic self, raw, unguarded, vulnerable. Most men spend their lives protecting themselves from ever encountering that core. Why? Because to face it means dismantling everything they thought they were. Jung believed that individuation, the process of integrating all aspects of the psyche, is the central task of life. But individuation requires brutal honesty. It requires a man to face not only his light, but also his shadow, not only his achievements, but also his failures, not only his pride, but also his shame. And for many men, this is unbearable. They would rather live behind illusions than confront their own reflection in its entirety. This is why the inability to face the true self is the deepest weakness. It keeps men chained to patterns of behavior they do not understand. It traps them in cycles of repression, projection, and avoidance. A man who cannot face himself is like a house built on sand. No matter how impressive the exterior, the foundation is fragile. Consider how this weakness reveals itself in everyday life. A man who boasts about his success but secretly fears he is not enough. A man who insists he is in control but trembles when life throws chaos his way. A man who avoids silence, who fears solitude, because in quiet moments, the truth begins to whisper. These are not just habits, they are defenses against the most terrifying confrontation of all, the confrontation with the self. But here lies the paradox Jung understood so well. Within this weakness is also the seed of the greatest strength. When a man finally dares to strip away the masks, when he confronts his shadow and accepts his mortality, when he stops running from the question of who he truly is, he begins to awaken. The weakness becomes a doorway to transformation. The very fragility that once enslaved him becomes the source of his authenticity, his wisdom, and his freedom. And so, as we look back at the 9 weaknesses we have uncovered, the pressure of the persona, the repression of emotions, the hunger for validation, the fear of insignificance, the shadow self, the wound of intimacy, the illusion of control, the denial of mortality, and finally, the inability to confront the true self, we see a complete map of the hidden male psyche. Each weakness reveals not only vulnerability, but also the possibility of growth. Each weakness is both a crack in the armor and a potential entry point into greater depth and wholeness. Now I ask you, how many of these weaknesses have you seen reflected in the men around you? How many have you recognized within yourself? And most importantly, what would happen if these weaknesses were no longer hidden, but faced directly, with courage and awareness? Jung would tell us that this is the path not only to understanding others, but to transforming ourselves. If this journey has resonated with you, if these insights have opened your mind to the unseen dimensions of human nature, I invite you to subscribe, to share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and to leave your reflections below. Which of the 9 weaknesses struck you the most? Which one do you believe is the hardest to overcome? Your voice matters, and your perspective may awaken someone else on their path. Remember, the unconscious will always direct our lives until we bring it to light. What we deny does not disappear. It controls us from the shadows. The choice each man must make is whether to remain blind to these truths or to courageously confront them and step into authenticity. The 9 hidden weaknesses of men are not merely flaws to be exploited. They are reminders that beneath every appearance of strength lies a complex human being struggling with forces within. To understand these weaknesses is to see through illusions, to witness the fragile humanity behind the mask. And to understand them fully is to realize that the greatest weakness of all is also the greatest opportunity, to awaken, to transform, and to finally become whole. So, the next time you look at a man who seems unshakable, remember Jung's words. Awakening does not come from the image we project to the world, but from the truth we are willing to face within. And perhaps in that reflection, you will not only understand men more deeply, you will also come closer to understanding yourself. Thanks for looking.